I didn't shave for 1 week to look badass for that intro. What's going on, YouTube? Free-to-play gaming here with our Ultimate Elemental Halls Guide 2.0. That's right, we felt the need for speed. No, we felt the need to re-release one of our most popular videos and update the runs we showcased for the Elemental Halls. Now this almost feels like the special edition big movie studios create to repolish old films, huh? The truth is, many new units have been released since the first version of this guide LMC did back in the day, and some strategies have been adjusted in accordance. We'll talk about the meat and potatoes of each hall based on the information provided in Summoner's Wiki. I will link that in the description so that you can visit the page yourself. 2 runs will display along while we talk about each elemental hall, 2 back-to-back B7 runs with different comms, and 1 B10 run. The B7 runs are done with obtainable/farmable monsters, and the B10 run is done with endgame players in mind. This way we cater to both newer players and veterans at the same time. Now, of course, when we mean obtainable is something like this, the water Garuda here that you can get from secret dungeons, or this is actually a 2-star natural, so we can get this from an unknown scroll. Another example of an obtainable/farmable monster is this Wind Griffon here, Bernard, that you can get as a drop here in Tamer Desert. And another is Fusion Hexagram here, where you can get monsters like Veromos and Sigmarus and Beretta that are showcased in this video. And lastly, but not least, is a Hall of Heroes monsters that everybody could farm. So if you're missing one of the monsters we showcased that were past Hall of Heroes, just look at one of the 3 runs. At least a couple different monsters are showcased for each elemental hall, so you should be able to replace the one you are missing. Now we'll talk about B7 and B10 runs in this video because they are the most popular floors to farm mid and high essences respectively. And we'll also showcase monster lists from Summoner's War Tool Shack and post a link in the description as well so that you can see the entire selection and pick your favorite monster. No runes will be showcased in this video, and that's because there are almost 30 unique monsters featured, so it would take way too long to talk about each rune build individually. But if you have questions about runes, please feel free to comment below and we will respond. Now most runs feature max level 6-star monsters, but you can do up to B7 with 4 or 5-star monsters if you have decent runes on them. Okay, so don't feel discouraged by the fact that we used almost exclusively 6-star units. The load screen before each hall gives away some hints on what strategy you need to apply to beat that hall. To put it in calm to us words, get familiar with the boss mechanics. With the right understanding and proper tactics, you can defeat them with weaker monsters. So without further ado, let's talk about the Hall of Magic. Now the Hall of Magic is considered to be the easiest of the bunch. It's open 24/7, non-stop. You can farm that whenever you want. We usually farm this dungeon for the essences of magic, low, mid, and high, of course, depending on the floor. These drops here are the same for all elemental halls, 2-star rainbow mons on each floor. B7 up to B10 has a chance to drop 3-star rainbow mons. Of course, there's a high chance here to get unknown scrolls and mystical summoning and shapeshifting stones with a much lower chance. The added drop on light, dark, fire, water, and wind are of course the essences of that specific attribute and also the Angelmon of that said attribute. Now the boss abilities are exactly the same for all of the bosses of the elemental halls, only some of them have an added skill. We'll talk about that when we reach that said boss. Now let's take a look at the Keeper of Magic here. The first skill is called Deadman's Purification. Attacks all enemies and stuns them for 1 turn by chance. The damage increases as fewer enemies stand. So the more monsters you lose, the harder this skill hits. Second skill is called Death Glare. Burns enemies with a cursed glare and inflicts continuous damage for 3 turns with a high chance. And the passive is called Annihilate. Gets an extra turn if enemy falls. So should you lose a monster in this battle, the boss goes again and again and again until your entire party is wiped away. Now, the left crystal abilities are the same throughout the entity of the Hall of Magic. It's called Assault Crystal, and it inflicts big damage on 1 enemy. The right crystal ability changes according to the floor. You can pause the video here to take a look at this graph or visit Summoner's Wiki yourself. The 2 floors we addressed in the video is B7, Strength and Defense Crystal. Increases the boss's defense for 3 turns. So good idea to bring a stripper, a cleanser, to strip away that increase in defense. And B10, of course, is the Disturb Recovery Crystal, which disturbs the hit point recovery of all enemies for 2 turns with a fixed chance. So it's a very good idea to bring units that can clear away those debuffs like Konomiya and so on and so forth. Now, the general strategy for the Hall of Magic is pretty straightforward. You can bring pretty much whatever unit you have runed up properly. The only thing that's worthy of consideration is that a group healer is advised, but like I said before, be careful about the Disturbed Recovery Crystal in B5 and B10, and that the bosses and towers are immune to immobility effects. So that's enough about the Hall of Magic. Let's move on to the Hall of Light. Now, the Hall of Light is a dungeon that's open on Sundays. From here you can collect the Essences of Light of low, mid, and high variety. The only added thing is the Light Angelmon, and of course the chance on obtainable Light Secret Dungeons. These are the 2 stars, and these are the 3 stars. As far as boss abilities go, the Guardian of Light has the exact same 3 skills we talked about when we went over the Hall of Magic. The added one is the Iron Guardian, which increases the Guardian's defense by 500%. So it's a very good idea to bring a unit that can break that defense. Left crystal abilities are the same for B1 throughout B10. Strength and Defense Crystal again increases the boss's defense for 3 turns. And the right crystal abilities are these right here. B7 is the Shock Crystal that stuns 1 enemy for 1 turn. And B10 is a life-stealing crystal that attacks all enemies and inflicts a proportion of their hit points as damage. Now, the general strategy for the Hall of Light is to use defense decreasing skills and or defense ignoring skills to crack pass through the boss's defense. Now, there's so many units that have defense breaks, but if I wanted to take a look at which ones I have, for example, I would go here to Summoners War Tool Shack, press on Toggle Filters, then I would press here on Defense minus reduces defense, and then that list would show me exactly which monsters. As you can see, there are 4 pages worth of monsters that have defense breaks, but one of the very known ones is the Fire Inugami Raoh here. As you can see, Scratch has the effect we're looking for. Attacks with giant claws to weaken the enemy's defense with a 50% chance, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go over the entire list. If you want, the link is going to be in the description. You can visit Summoners War Tool Shack and do exactly what I just did to find out exactly which monsters you can use for that purpose. Now, going back to the strategy, in case there is a tower that grants invincibility to the Guardian, use skills that remove buffs from enemies. Otherwise, kill the tower first. Of course, that's going to be slower, but of course also more efficient for your run. Group healer is advised still, but be careful of the Disturbed Recovery Crystals, and bosses and towers are immune to immobility effect. So enough about the Hall of Light. Let's take a look at the Hall of Dark. Now the Hall of Dark is a dungeon that's open every Monday. From here you can farm Essences of Darkness, of course, and Angelmon of the Dark attribute. These are the 2-star obtainable secret dungeons, and the 3-star. This Dark Yeti here is very much sought after. He's a fusion mat for the Veromos. Now the same boss abilities, no added skill, Deadman's Purification, Death Flare, and Annihilate, the ones we talked about in the Hall of Magic. The catch though in the Hall of Dark are the crystal abilities, loads and loads of poisonous crystals inflicting continuous damage on all your units. All crystals both left and right throughout B1 to B10 are the same poisonous crystals. They inflict continuous damage to all enemies for 3 turns, so you have to remove those continuous damage effect, and one way to do it is by units that can remove harmful effects like these rarer ones, the Fire Archangel, the Water Death Knight, the Wind Undyne Delphoid, for example. Removes all harmful effects on all allies, also granting immunity, which is also very good. And one of the obtainable ones, of course, we already talked about, the Water Garuda, Konomiya, one of the best ones, and obtainable, very good also for rift rates, so I highly recommend you to build that one. Another option to get past those damage over time effects that the Hall of Dark applies is just by using immunity, either with the Delphoid we talked about, or a unit like this Fire Epicon Priest, Chloe right here, that will prevent your units from ever receiving those damage over time effects. Alright, so pretty much bring allies with resistance, leader skills, and or cleansing skills to cope with continuous damage. So there you go. Resistance, high resistance, of course, is also recommended to prevent your party from ever receiving those damage over time effects. Group healer, of course, is advised, and bosses and towers are still immune to immobility effects. So that's enough about the Hall of Dark. Let's move forward to the Hall of Fire. Now the Hall of Fire is open on Tuesdays. From here you can collect Essences of Fire, of course, and the attribute specific Angelmons. The 2-star obtainable fire secret dungeons are these. This one is of special interest, the Fire Harpoo Colleen. She's very good in rift rates and in necro. And these are the 3-star obtainable ones. Some of them are fusion, like this magical archer here, and some are just good units like this Fire Griffon here. So be on the lookout for those. The boss abilities are exactly the same, no added skill here. The catch though are the bomb crystals. The left crystal straps all enemies with bombs. The bombs detonate after 3 turns and inflict deadly damage. That damage is very significant, very high. And the right crystal abilities, they vary from floor to floor. In B7 we have the weaken attack crystal, weakens that attack power of enemies for 2 turns, and on B10 we have the shock crystal, stuns one enemy for 1 turn. So what you need to do for the Hall of Fire is bring allies with resistance leader skills or debuff cleansing skills, so the same units that were good for the Hall of Dark to remove those dots, those are still good here to remove the bombs. And units that do that is this Veromos here, the Dark Ifrit with the passive, the Water Garuda, we talked about him enough in this video, the Wind Delphoid, we addressed her before, Lulu, the Water Owl, Neostone Agent Fire Lisa, the Wind Penguin Knight Mal is a good option, although he has the elemental disadvantage in the Fire Dungeon. But keep in mind that the crystals along the way to the boss, if they have a white circle above their head, they are neutral, so don't worry that they have a red color. They don't have any advantage or disadvantage towards wind units like the map, for example. Now attack bar reduction skills and speed decreasing skills can postpone bombs, keep that in mind. So units like the Beretta or the Spectra we mentioned previously are very good options here to slow down the towers so that they put up the bombs less frequently. Group healers are still advised, but be careful of stages with disturb recovery crystals. And like on all stages, bosses and towers are immune to immobility effects. So enough about the Hall of Fire. let's move on to the Hall of Water. The Hall of Water is open every Wednesday. From this hall you can collect essences of water and the attribute-specific angel mons. The 2-star obtainable water secret dungeons are these right here. The Water Garuda, of course, stands out. It's a unit we've been talking about the most throughout this video. You're pretty much sick and tired of hearing about this unit, but definitely if you don't have one, be on the lookout for that secret dungeon. Farm as many as you can to max skill that unit. The 3 stars are right here. Some of them are fusion, some are actually pretty good units like this Water Werewolf right here, Vigor. So make sure you get yourselves one of these units when that secret dungeon comes your way. Now the Guardian of Water, the boss abilities, has actually 2 added skills in comparison to the previous ones. Strong Guardian, Guardian's hit points has been increased by 500%. So he's got a ton of hit points. And Sense of Duty, the passive, attack power increases with time. So the longer it takes for you to kill that boss, the harder he will hit. The left crystal abilities throughout B1 to B10 is a Disturbed Recovery Crystal. Still disturbs the hit point recovery of all enemies for 2 turns with a fixed chance, and the right crystal varies from floor to floor. B7 Weakened Defense Crystal decreases the defense of all enemies for 2 turns, and B10 is the Immunity Crystal, removes the harmful effect on the boss and grants immunity for 3 turns. So it's a good idea to bring that cleanser that can remove the immunity of the boss so that you can keep applying your debuffs. Now the general strategy is to use skills dealing damage proportional to the enemy's max hit points and or continuous damage dots, because continuous damage effects apply based on the enemy's max hit points, 5% per turn. So the more hit points a boss has, the more damage the damage over time effects do. Obviously, another option, like we said, is damage proportionate to the enemy's max hit points. Sigmarus right here is a very good example of an obtainable unit that has exactly that skill we're looking for. Ice Volcano attacks all enemies with an exploding ice volcano, inflicting damage based on their hit points and decreasing their attack power for 2 turns. So that's very good for a set dungeon. And some other units that scale according to the enemy's hit points are some of these units right here. For example, the Wind Phoenix Tishar is another option, or the Light Amazon Lin right here if you happen to open one of these from a Light and Dark Scroll. Lots of people use the Fire Griffon actually. Spectra, Special Assault, inflicts damage proportional to the enemy's max hit points. I've seen that deal tons of damage. Don't worry that he's a fire unit, usually he can do it. Okay, so strike fast as the boss gets increased attack power for every turn that passes. We already talked about that. In case there's a tower that grants invincibility to the Guardian, use skills that remove buffs from enemies. Otherwise, kill the tower first. And the last 2 options are the same for every Elemental Hall. Group heals advised, and bosses and towers immune to mobility effects. Enough about the Hall of Water. Let's cover the last hall, the Hall of Wind. Now last but not least, the Hall of Wind is a dungeon that's open on Thursdays. From here, of course, you can collect the essences of wind and the attribute-specific angel mons. The 2-star obtainable wind secret dungeons are these, highlight being Ramagos or Ramagot, like the fans like to call them if you're one of those fans. The 3 stars are these right here, nothing majorly too important to write home about, but if you need those units, make sure to farm them. On the boss abilities, you see no added skill, just the basic 3 skills we talked about on the previous halls. But the crystal abilities for the left crystal are the healing crystals. B1 through B5 recovers a certain amount of the boss's hit points, and B6 to B10 fully recovers the boss's hit points. So as you will see in the strategic advice, heal blocks are advised. Let's take a quick look at the right crystal abilities for B7. It's a strength and attack crystal, which increases the boss attack power for 3 turns. And for B10 we have an invincibility crystal again, which reduces all the damage on the boss down to 0 for 2 turns. So definitely bring the strippers to cleanse away the invincibility. Now the general strategy is to use skills that can cause unrecoverable effects and kill it fast. Units like the Fire Harpoon, Choline, as you can see here, If you click on the unrecoverable tab, you get the entire list, but Colleen definitely stands out as one of the best units for that floor just because she's so easily obtainable and she can be used in Rift Raids and Necro, so it's a unit that is helpful all the way. So the Deadly Dart throws sharp feathers to attack the enemy and prevents them from recovering the hit points for 2 turns. Of course, there's many other options like the Death Knights on the first, the Joker on the first, and many other units. So make sure you check the list to find which one you currently own. 1 turn recovery disturbance though is not recommended. The Guardian's turn might arrive before the towers and cause the ailment to be removed. So make sure you have either a 2-turn heal block, or you make sure you got units like Spectra, Boretta, etc. that can reduce the attack bar of the boss so that your 1-turn heal block sticks there. In case there is a tower that grants invincibility to the Guardian, use skills that remove buffs from enemies. Otherwise, kill the tower first, especially the right tower, this invincibility crystal. The other way is to just kill it. Of course, that will slow down your run, but by all means, if you can't go directly for the boss, kill that tower first to get the more efficient run for you. The last 2 tooltips are the same like we saw on all the previous hauls. Group healer is advised and bosses and towers are immune to immunity effects. Now that pretty much sums up the guide, the ultimate comprehensive guide from the Free-to-Play Gaming Network for the Elemental Hauls. Big shout out to Summoners War Tool Shack here for providing us with some of the lists of the monsters, and of course to Summoners Wikia for providing us the background and the information for the video. Both these links will be down in the description, so make sure you check these sites out. They will help you out a ton in the game. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you learned something from this video. I learned something today, like they say in South Park. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys in the next video. Free-to-Play Gaming Network, signing out.